This is the $700 budget build, complete with everything you need to get up and running, all for $700, which in this current market really isn't that bad. All things considered, it's a Ryzen 5 1600AF RX 480 build with 16 gigs of DDR4 provided by Timetech. Perfectly adequate for most modern games. 2021 has been a rather rough year for gamers as a whole. Not only have the game releases been kind of questionable, but so have the hardware releases, especially so since most of the stuff that's been released has been super high-end stuff. Thankfully, though, we do have some sort of relief coming early next year. However, in the meantime, we don't really have that many options, especially if you're a budget-oriented gamer. But that all changes today, especially because I've put together a $700 gaming PC that can do pretty much whatever you want from it, given that you're within reason. This includes gaming, photo and video editing, even things like machine learning to a small extent. This machine can do all of those to some extent, and I have to say that I am rather impressed. Before we get into this video, I'd like to take a moment to say not to forget to leave a like and subscribe, and comment if there's something you think I missed in this video. If there is some information that you feel I should have covered, then commenting or joining the community Discord is one of the best ways to get in touch. Now without any further ado, let's dive into the specs of the system. Starting off with the heart of our build, we've got the Ryzen 5 1600AF. Realistically, a Ryzen 5 1600 base model would provide identical performance, but its ultimate price and the fact that I had one of these on hand makes it a solid choice in terms of multi-threaded performance. Other chips to look out for include the slightly more expensive i5, such as the now discounted i5 10400, or even the much cheaper i3 10100. Moving into 2022, it's possible that Intel releases cheaper Alder Lake parts, as well as AMD releasing 3D V-Cache, so there is some stuff to look forward to on the CPU side of things for budget gamers. Either way, we've paired our Ryzen 5 with 16 gigs of Pinnacle MM1 conduit DDR4 clocked at 3200 megatransfers per second, which were provided to me by Timetech. I've still included the cost of these modules in the total cost of the system, but the sticks will make for a great pairing with the Ryzen 5. For the motherboard, we've got the Gigabyte B450M Ultra Durable. This board offers 4 DIMM slots, an M.2 drive bay, a PCI expansion slot, and the AM4 socket. This leaves us open to upgrading the CPU down the line to newer and much more powerful Zen 2 and Zen 3 based chips. This board isn't great for overclocking, but given this is a budget build, overclocking is something we don't necessarily have the cooling for anyways. For storage, we've got a Kingston 2 40GB SSD. Not the greatest, but for storing the OS in a few games at a time, it's perfect, and I've had zero complaints setting the thing up and using it. Now moving on to arguably the most important part of any gaming build, the graphics card. As the eyes of our system, I chose the RX 484GB, a 1080p targeted performance segment GPU from 2016. This is an AMD card, meaning we get FSR support in newer titles, but this is only from the Polaris generation, so we're missing ray tracing and other real-time effect accelerators. I chose this specific card because of the price though. Coming in at $200, it's a decent deal when comparing to the 8GB flavor, or even the GTX 1066GB. This is probably because the 4 gigs of memory on this card limits it when mining cryptocurrencies, so it's not as desirable as other cards with similarly powerful chips on board. I could have gone with a 1060, but it costs around $100 more in the current market, and keep in mind that you'll always be able to upgrade. If the system doesn't fit your personal needs, you can always adjust the parts list to fit your requirements. It's one of the beauties of PC gaming. You aren't stuck with the same hardware for an entire generation. You can upgrade at your own leisure when GPUs are cheaper and more available. Let's dive into some performance figures though and see how the components in this machine stack up to other machines I have on hand. Let's start with the CPU Z benchmark, and at stock settings with the stock cooler we scored a multi-core score of 3,377 and a single core score of 415. This equates to multi-core scaling of roughly 811%, meaning this chip performs like an 8-core, 8-threaded chip from a raw performance perspective, despite only having 6 physical cores. Moving into our second synthetic benchmark, and 3D Mark Time Spy had a graphics score of 3,918, and a CPU score of 5,912. This score, while not earth-shattering, is still rather solid for some gaming. And keep in mind these scores are from a 4K run of the benchmark. 1080p performance will look even better, but this is what the program defaulted to. Moving into some games, and let's discuss how I plan to showcase game performance using the $700 build. Later today, the first episode exploring game performance will release. In it, I'll explore how the game performs on this specific hardware and explore different resolutions. From there, I'll expand on coverage of a particular game based on performance criteria, as well as additional coverage I plan on adding to future episodes. Stay tuned, and I can't wait to see you in the future episodes. As the library of games tested increases, so will the conclusions that can be drawn. This is experimental after all, and I can't wait to go on this journey exploring budget hardware together.